Hello, good evening. July 29th, 2012 is the date. This is Victor's third attempt to do a YouTube upload. Excuse me. This is, like I was saying, this is Victor's third attempt to do a YouTube upload. Experimentally, maybe more out of boredom than anything else, but trying to, having tried to have done this on several occasions. This time, as you can see, this is why I never became an actor, because obviously I stutter, and although I'm speaking to a camera right now, I'm sure millions upon millions of people all over this great planet of ours will be viewing this at one time or another, even after my death. And I just want to do a good job, like everything else, But anyway, wanting to touch upon something that is very dear to my heart, which has the worst reputation. I mean, the worst reputation in the world, and that is, of course, progressive rock, or as the punters like to say, prog rock. I never really liked prog rock. I always went by the title progressive rock, well, the name of to define the genre. Consequently, as a child, it was really, we called it art rock, and it pretty much started. I was very young at the time, but I have it here somewhere. If I can find it, I will show it to you. Strange, if you saw my other videos, you would have noticed that every time I'm looking for something, I really can't find it, but I have found it. This was really the very first art rock album ever made. Of course, there were various inclinations that music was going in that direction, generally by 1965 even. Not just the Beatles, but the Beach Boys, so many bands I could start mentioning that were just getting a little influenced by what was happening at the time, which was open your mind, expand your mind, and get away from the boring conservative 1950s, which was in black and white, and obviously the 60s was in color. So this was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Of course, it just broke down all boundaries, and the Beatles were the Beatles at that time were kings, and if they could do it, then you could do it. And of course, their ideology behind this was A, Pet Sounds, which blew Paul McCartney's mind, and B, Paul's idea for this concept, if you may, again, could possibly be even the first concept album, if you want to call that a concept album, or as Ian Anderson would love to say, what you want to call a concept album. I lost my track now, but that's okay. Talking about Sgt. Pepper, yes. Right, and Pet Sounds, and they wanted to portray a band unlike themselves. We're not the Beatles, we're somebody else, and someone, that you don't know, so there's no pressure on, we can do what we want, and, we may sound like this, but we may not sound like this if we take that approach. And that just broke everything open and down, and before you knew it, you had Pink Floyd doing Ummagumma, Frank Zappa doing all his stuff. It was just on and on and on. King Crimson, The Nice, Procol Harum, even American bands like Iron Butterfly, and even, well, Zappa was American, and of course Hendrix. So many people touched upon psychedelia, which morphed into art rock, which is now called progressive rock, or as everyone else likes to use the word, prog rock. One of the champions of that genre was, of course, King Crimson. King Crimson were one of the very first bands to put out anything that was worth noticing at the time. And here we go. This is the Steven Wilson remastered 40th anniversary edition of In the Core of the Crimson King. Steven Wilson actually did the whole catalog, which is just incredible. And his new solo album is great, by the way. And you got Islands, which was the 4th studio album by King Crimson. Various lineup changes, too numerous to mention. We have Red, which was unfortunately their last studio album, recorded after their gig in Central Park, which was a historic one, to say the least. USA, again, all, either 40th anniversary Steven Wilson remix editions or Japanese mini-sleeve. This was actually the very first Japanese mini-sleeve I ever got, by the way. And that's another story for another time. So again, music began to expand. Music began to become more broader in scope and in taste. Bands like Jethro Tull, bands like my favorite band, actually my all-time favorite band, if you really want to get down and dirty, my all-time favorite band is Von der Graaf Generator. And this is one of my all-time favorite albums. The Least We Can Do Is Wave to Each Other. Prior, I said there was no extra tracks, but there is one extra track, the 7-inch version of Refugees. So you've got the normal LP version of Refugees, and then the 7-inch version of Refugees, which is a little different. I think it's a different tempo also, I'm not sure. I haven't heard it in a while, but I know it's noticeably different. Genesis were big, of course. Genesis, the Landmines Done on Broadway. Japanese mini sleeve with lyrics and story and pictures and blah, 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 blah. Of note, Refugee. Now, this is one of my all-time favorite prog rock albums, art rock albums, progressive rock albums ever made. Patrick Moraz is embarrassing. Ben Davison and Lee Jackson of the Nice. And of course, we all know the story. Patrick went to replace Rick Wakeman in Yes, broke their hearts. They never played it together ever again. They gave up on the music industry, which not really a prog band, but believe it or not, a very good band. They were simply rock, but at that time rock was very progressive, even straightforward rock, like a band like Uriah Heep. And of course the Roger Dean cover caught my eye. At the time, Paul Whitehead did all the Genesis, all the Van der Graaf, and Roger Dean were the top two artists at the time making covers. Speaking of which, one of the all-time progressive rock albums for me was Close to the Edge by Yes. Great LP. Unfortunately, Bill Bruford departed to join King Crimson after that. Another great album. If I was on a desert and had 5 albums to choose for the rest of my life, this would be one of them. Fool's Mate by Peter Hammill. Has a ton of people on it. Bob Fripp of King Crimson. Martin Pottinger. Ray Jackson. David Jackson, of course. Rob Clemens of Lindisfarne. So many people. Potter, Jackson of Van der Graaf, Fripp. Paul Whitehead even played an instrument. Guy Evans and Martin Pottinger. A lot of people, like I said. Moving on. Other representations of the genre. If I try not to make too much of a mess, this was a great band, Renaissance. This was my favorite Renaissance album, although there were really 2 Renaissances. This was the second Renaissance with Eddie Haslam, Turn of the Cards. And the first Renaissance was with Keith Relf. If you remember, was with the Yardbirds. It was the lead singer of the Yardbirds. Pink Floyd were a great band. Piper, The Gates of Dawn. And then Barrett went psycho whatever, and they came out with Source Full of Secrets, which really opened the door for psychedelia, which again was a genre of art rock. Bowie, believe it or not, this is my favorite Bowie album. Again, Japanese mini sleeve. Great rock album. I mean, it's really a rock album, and it's interesting, and it's developed, and it's complex, and it's time changes, and I have to say he's one of the best guitarists, Mick Ronson, rock guitarist. His work on this album is just amazing, and the Spiders are just amazing. Back to the real heavy-duty stuff, AC Who Am the Only One, Van der Graaf Generator. Again, Fripp is on Emperor in his War Room, prog to the max. Can't get any more prog than that. Actually, you could get a little bit more prog than that, and of course, like I said before, the all-time ultimate art rock, progressive rock, prog rock album, Pawn Hearts. Listening to this, in the right equipment, you'll hear Fripp. He's all over the place. Of course, he does that amazing solo of In a Plague of Lighthouse Keepers. But it just is just, they even admitted they did a lot of LSD at this time. It just breaks into something that no prog band could even come close to. It breaks into an atmosphere, a dimension, an ideology, a landscape, a wall of sound that just will blow your mind. And after this, that was that. And that's a shame because it could have gone so much farther, but this was pretty much it. On an almost equal basis, not as intense, for better use of a word, but very, 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 very interesting and very, very, very progressive in the sense that it was original, was probably, again, in my top 5.